My wife stole my platinum card and threw a surprise awards banquet for her boss, who hates me. She texted, "You never get recognition anyway." I replied, "Recognition comes with truth." The card she swiped was set to trigger notifications to all execs, and 6 months later her boss publicly humiliated her at a charity event. "You used my card, Melina, for something important. You don't even use it. Because it's monitored. For fraud. You know that. He deserved it. You don't even care about things like this. He hates me." Well, you never get recognition anyway. Recognition comes with truth. That was the last conversation we had before everything exploded. I should have seen the signs long before it got to that point. But like a lot of people who end up in marriages with subtle narcissists, I was too quiet, too patient, too hopeful for too long. Melina and I met in our mid-30s. I was 35, newly divorced from a short-lived marriage that ended peacefully but left me cautious. Melina was the opposite of cautious, vibrant, elegant, socially magnetic. She had this presence in every room she walked into. I met her at a friend's engagement party in Kirkland. She laughed loud and listened with intent. It felt like being pulled into gravity. She worked in marketing, fashion, branding, things I didn't understand but admired from a distance. I had started and recently sold a successful data security firm. I had no kids, no debt, a lot of free time, and no desire to chase spotlights. Melina liked that about me. At first, we married about a year after meeting. She wanted the big wedding. I agreed. She wanted to move closer to downtown. I gave up my peaceful house near Ballard and bought a townhouse near Queen Anne. Her career was picking up. Mine was winding down. She thrived in fast-paced, high-profile environments. I was fine spending whole weekends in my home office with a good cup of coffee and messy spreadsheets. Things were decent for the first few years. We had separate lives that overlapped at the edges, and in some ways that worked. But cracks started to form when Melina got hired by Verley & Company, a luxury branding firm headquartered in Bellevue, known for their elite client base and politics-heavy corporate ladder. Her boss was Royce Halperin, a man about 20 years older than her with a tailored smirk and the kind of handshake that makes you feel like you just lost something. I met him only once, at an executive dinner she dragged me to. He looked me up and down and said, "Ah, the silent type." Then he laughed at his own comment and turned to someone else. That was Royce, the kind of guy who insults you and calls a charm. I didn't rise to it. But Melina didn't defend me either. Later that night, when I asked what that was about, she just shrugged. "He's kind of old school, but he's brilliant. Everyone respects him." Melina started working longer hours, attending more mandatory off-hours events. She started dressing like someone who had something to prove. I started feeling like a placeholder in my own home. Conversations became transactional. Then came the weekend I went to Portland to help my sister, Talia, move apartments. She's a single mom and needed an extra hand. I was halfway through building a new dresser when my phone started buzzing. 6 separate charges, all within 2 hours. $3,200. W Bellevue $2,900. Bella Flora $1,400. Jazz Quartet Live $5,100. Tableau Catering $3,500. AV Rentals Northwest $2,700. Prestige Linens and Decor. I knew that card. It was my Platinum Amex, the one tied to my old company's fraud monitoring systems. When I sold my company, I kept that card as part of a retained consultancy. It was technically inactive except for approved expenses. Any activity triggered real-time alerts to several senior people, including one of my best friends and our former CFO. I called Melina. No answer. I texted, "Did you use my Platinum Amex?" Nothing for an hour. Then she replied, "Yes. I needed to make things perfect for Royce's recognition gala. You never use it." Followed immediately by, "You never get recognition anyway. Let someone who does have their moment." It wasn't just the charge. It was the tone. Like I had no value, like I was background noise in her production. I replied, "Recognition comes with truth." And that was it. I didn't cancel the card. I didn't call her again. I didn't rush home or go off the rails. Instead, I watched. Because I knew something Melina didn't. That card was flagged in 3 internal systems and connected to 3 compliance boards. Royce's name was now tied to a charge on a monitored executive account. I made one call to Andrea, my old CFO and now compliance lead at one of the firms we used to partner with. "Was that your charge?" she asked. "Nope," I said. "But the gala should be fun to watch." She didn't laugh. Just said, "Royce is going to have a heck of a month." I didn't say anything to Melina. I didn't warn her. Because I knew she wouldn't believe me anyway. She believed in optics, not consequences. That night, she came home glowing. I asked her how it went. She smiled like it was prom night and said, "Flawless." Royce called me irreplaceable. I said, "Good," and went back to reading. She didn't notice that I wasn't looking at the pages. Months passed. Royce started showing up less and less on her social media. Then he disappeared entirely. Melina stopped talking about him. Started working from home more. Then, one day, she casually mentioned that there had been some restructuring at Verley & Company. What kind of restructuring? Just internal stuff. Upper-level changes. You know how it is. I nodded. She looked away. She never knew I was still in contact with people inside the board. She didn't know that Royce had been quietly investigated by 2 partner firms after his name showed up linked to unauthorized event spending using a third-party corporate card. My card. They traced the event, the charges, the logistics, and Melina's personal involvement. Apparently, Royce had told them the gala was company-sanctioned. When they found out it was paid by someone outside the org, well, that was enough to spark internal reviews. Royce resigned for personal reasons for months after the gala. But the real fallout came later at a black-tie charity event in downtown Seattle, hosted at the Rainier Club. Melina went, of course. She wore a deep navy gown and posted a dozen Instagram stories captioned, "Big night," and grateful for this recognition. About an hour into the event, the host made an announcement. It was brief, clinical, and devastating. Before we continue, we must address a compliance issue brought forward by one of our partnering sponsors. An individual being considered for recognition tonight was involved in misrepresenting funding sources for a professional event. This individual is no longer eligible for consideration, and this information will be shared with our donor transparency board. Melina's post feed stopped abruptly after that. She came home 3 days later. Not to apologize, not to explain, just to grab some things from the bedroom. She stared at me while zipping up her luggage. You could have warned me. I looked up from my desk. So could you. She didn't say anything else. Just left. She stayed at her friend Carmela's place after that, or so I heard. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. Our townhouse was quieter, which, to most people, would probably feel empty, even lonely. To me, it was like getting a clogged drain finally cleared. I could think again. I could breathe. I didn't reach out. I didn't check her social media. I didn't tell Talia what had happened. Not because I was protecting Melina, but because I needed time to figure out what kind of person I had really been married to, not the version I told myself I had, but the one who thought nothing of taking a monitored card, forging a fantasy around her status, and then, when it burned down, acted like I was the villain for not stepping into the fire with her. But the silence didn't last. About a week after she left, I got a text from her mother. "I don't know what's going on between you and Melina, but she's very upset. I hope you didn't do something to make her feel unsafe." That pissed me off in a way I hadn't expected. I didn't even reply. Not at first. But 2 days later, I finally texted back. I didn't make her feel unsafe. She made reckless decisions and got caught. That's on her. Melina's mother didn't respond. I doubt she even read the whole message. That family was always good at looking away when things got messy. The real kicker came when I received a formal request for mediation. Melina had filed to contest our prenup. Yes, our prenup. Before we married, we agreed, at her urging, ironically, to sign a very clear, lawyer-drafted, unambiguous prenuptial agreement. She didn't want to feel indebted to me financially if we ever divorced. Said she believed in fairness and independence. Now, apparently, she felt manipulated into signing it. Claimed that I hid the true value of my retained firm equity, and that the financial tools I had in place, including the very account she used, were intentionally deceptive. Her lawyer claimed that the platinum card wasn't adequately explained as monitored corporate property, despite the fact that she used it for a $19,000 event under someone else's name with no written approval, and that the paper trail showed the gala directly contributed to an internal investigation that led to her boss's resignation. It was like watching someone crash a car into a tree and then sue the tree. I showed everything to my attorney. Michael, a slow-moving man with the deadpan patience of someone who's seen every type of mess people can make when they stop loving each other. He sat back, read the texts, the receipts, the report summaries, the policy alerts, and finally said, "Her team will drop this the minute they realize we're prepared to go to court. This isn't a negotiation, it's a tantrum." He was right, but the tantrum dragged on for weeks. Melina sent me long, winding emails. Some angry, some sad, some nostalgic. Like she was flipping through old photo albums trying to remind both of us that we once loved each other. One email stood out, though. She wrote, "You didn't protect me. You let me walk into a trap." I read that sentence at least 5 times. She still didn't get it. She didn't see that I wasn't the trap, I was the exit. I gave her the space, the autonomy, the trust, and she used it to walk straight into a self-made disaster. Around that time, Carmela called me. That was strange, because we weren't close. She sounded hesitant, but serious. "Clark, I just want to say something. You didn't hear this from me, okay? But Melina's been telling people you set her up, that this was some scheme to ruin her career." I exhaled slowly, not in shock, but in confirmation. It tracked. "Thanks for telling me. She's not doing great. You probably know that. I don't agree with what she did. I just thought you should know." I thanked her again and hung up. I sat there, staring at nothing for a while. And that's when I remembered a moment from years ago, maybe 2 years into our marriage. We were walking through Discovery Park on a cold, gray morning. She was quiet. I asked her what she was thinking about. She said, Sometimes I feel like I'm performing all the time. Like I'm the show people expect, and if I stop dancing, they'll all just leave. I told her she didn't have to perform with me. She smiled, but I don't think she believed me. Maybe she never did. And maybe that's what this was all about, not the card, not Royce, not even the recognition. Maybe it was about the fact that she couldn't stand a life that didn't come with an audience. And I was the man who stopped clapping. After Carmela's call, I stopped giving Melina the benefit of the doubt, even internally. You know how you catch yourself making excuses for someone, even after the facts are obvious? That low-level gaslighting you do to yourself to preserve the image of the relationship you wanted to have, not the one you actually had? I stopped doing that. There was something strangely clarifying about hearing that Melina was out there spinning a story where I was the mastermind of her downfall. Like I had some grand vendetta instead of just being the guy whose card got stolen and misused. It made me remember every little red flag I had ignored. The way she used to say, "It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission," whenever she did something impulsive. The way she downplayed boundaries not just with me, but with other people too. Her friends, her coworkers. There was always a line that didn't quite apply to her. The way she hated being bored. Not just restless hated boredom like it was a personal attack. If a weekend didn't have some flashy dinner, social event, or Instagrammable moment, she'd get irritable. Like the silence itself offended her. And the way she loved to retell stories with just enough edits to make herself look a little more heroic, a little more admired. The problem is, when you do that long enough, you start believing your own edits. I didn't tell anyone about the legal mess we were in, not even Talia. I didn't want sympathy or opinions or well-meaning advice. I just wanted it all to pass like a kidney stone, slowly, painfully, but eventually. Meanwhile, Melina's professional world had collapsed. I heard through someone I knew in PR that she tried to pitch herself as a consultant. Personal branding, reputation management. But people talk. Word gets around, especially in Seattle's tight-knit corporate circles. And especially when the story involves misuse of funds, internal investigations, and a public compliance announcement during a charity gala. Even if her name wasn't spoken out loud, people knew. Whispers travel faster than facts. So she pivoted, started doing freelance work remotely. I saw her LinkedIn update one day. Yes, I checked Sumi, strategic brand advisor, empowering individuals to shape their narrative. That last part felt ironic, considering how little accountability she had taken for shaping her own. Then, in mid-January, her lawyer backed off. Quietly, my attorney called me and said, "They're dropping the challenge. It's over. No apology. No settlement. No olive branch. Just silence." And I was fine with that. I didn't need her to admit anything. That ship had sailed long ago. But she wasn't quite done. A week after the legal issue was closed, she showed up at the townhouse. Unannounced. I had just finished a Zoom call and was walking into the kitchen when I saw her reflection in the glass of the front door. I opened it slowly. She was standing there in a black trench coat, hair tied up, face clean but tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from work, the kind that comes from holding a story together for too long. "I just wanted to talk," she said. I let her in. Not because I wanted closure, but because I was curious. Not about what she'd say, but how she'd say it. She looked around like the place had changed, though I hadn't touched a thing. "You kept it the same." "It was always my space," I said. She nodded, then sat on the edge of the couch, legs crossed tightly, hands in her lap. "I don't know how it got this bad." I didn't reply. I thought I was doing something good. For my team. For Royce. For my career. Still, I said nothing. I wasn't going to make this easy. I didn't think the card would. I mean, you never told me about the alerts. Or the internal systems. That made me raise an eyebrow. You used a card that didn't have your name on it. Paid for a private event. For your boss. Without telling your husband. She flinched, just slightly. I just wanted to make it all work. "You know." "No, I didn't." And I wasn't sure she even believed it herself. Then she added something that stuck with me. "Do you ever feel like you're fading out of your own life? Like you're just supporting someone else's script?" I looked at her, long and hard. "No," I said. "I felt like that when I was with you." Her eyes dropped. For once, she didn't have a comeback. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She just sat there, holding the silence like it was the only thing left she could control. Finally, she stood up. "I guess that's it then. It's been it for a while," I said. She walked to the door, hand on the knob, then paused. "I hope someday you can remember the good parts." I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, I just didn't know if I would remember the good parts. Because the truth was, when a person shows you over and over that their needs will always come before your trust, it starts to erase the memories you thought were safe. After she left that night, I didn't move for a while. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of bourbon, watching the condensation bead on the outside. The house felt even quieter than usual, and not in a peaceful way, in a post-storm silence kind of way. Like the walls themselves were catching their breath. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel relieved. I didn't even feel angry anymore. What I felt, honestly, was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind you get when you've spent too long carrying someone else's expectations, their drama, their damage, and finally set it all down. For weeks after that, I'd find little reminders of her everywhere. A velvet scrunchie behind the bathroom door, half a bottle of her shampoo, a digital frame still plugged in near her side of the bed, paused on a smiling photo of us at some winery in Walla Walla. The irony hit me then how often we took pictures of our best moments, trying to preserve them like proof. Evidence that we were happy, that we were okay. But you can't photograph what's rotting underneath. Around late February, Talia came to visit. She brought her son, Milo, and stayed for a long weekend. She knew something had happened I didn't need to explain. Sisters have a way of reading the space around you, not just the words. We were in the backyard, watching Milo toss pine cones into the fire pit, when she finally asked, "So, are you going to tell me what the heck happened? Or do I get to keep guessing based on how much bourbon is missing from your cabinet?" I smirked. Melina blew up her career using my corporate card to fund an ego project for her narcissist boss, then blamed me when it caught up with her. Talia blinked. Wow. Okay. That's not even one of the scenarios I imagined. I told her the whole story. The charges, the fallout, the compliance flag, the gala, the charity event, Melina's visit. All of it. She listened, eyebrows furrowed, arms crossed tightly against the chill. "And she really tried to say you set her up?" "Yep." She shook her head slowly, almost impressed. "I never liked her," she finally muttered. That made me laugh. The first real laugh in weeks. "You didn't even know her that well." "Exactly." We sat in silence a while, watching the flames from a distance. Then she looked at me and said something I hadn't expected. "You were always too generous with people who didn't deserve you." I didn't say anything, but it stuck with me, because it was true. There's this weird thing that happens when you're the calm one, the steady one, this safe place in people's lives. They start thinking you don't have a limit, that you'll just absorb every mess, every selfish decision, every betrayal like some kind of emotional landfill. They forget you can walk away. Or worse, they never believed you would. That following week, I went to the storage unit we had been renting together and cleared out the last of her boxes. It was mostly event leftovers, old brochures, branded tote bags, a stack of vision boards from some leadership retreat she hosted back in 2022. I flipped through one of them out of curiosity. It was covered in magazine cutouts, private jets, champagne glasses, a woman standing on a stage in front of a cheering crowd. In the middle, written in thick gold marker, "Be seen. Be proud. Be undeniable." It was all image. Not one word about integrity, or purpose, or relationships. I threw the whole stack away. There's a kind of grief that comes not from losing someone, but from realizing they were never who you thought they were. From seeing the gap between who someone pretended to be and who they chose to be when it mattered most. That kind of grief isn't loud. It doesn't come with sobbing or shouting. It comes quietly, like dust settling in a house after a collapse. And once it settles, you start seeing what's really left standing. By early spring, the divorce papers were finalized. No drawn-out mediation, no courtroom theatrics. The prenup held up exactly as it was designed to. She didn't get the house. She didn't get a piece of the firm's residuals. The only things she left with were what she walked in with and the reputation she'd built on borrowed charisma. Seattle was small enough that I'd hear little echoes of her every few weeks. Someone saw her at a launch party trying to pitch her services. Someone else mentioned she was working under a rebranded alias, Mel Ainsley. Instead of Melina Harper, like a new name could rinse away the past. It wasn't like I was obsessed, but I was aware. She had become a footnote in rooms she used to command. And I wasn't the one writing that story. She was. Then, the opportunity arrived. My former CFO, Andrea, the same one who'd alerted me when the card got flagged, reached out with a favor. One of her old colleagues had been hired to lead an emerging PR firm that specialized in reputation recovery. Apparently, they brought on a few new advisors and were recruiting a keynote speaker for a panel on the ethics of personal branding. Guess who had applied to be part of that speaker series? Melina, under her new alias. Andrea sent me the pitch deck. There she was, fourth slide and smiling headshot, bold bullet points, and a new title: Crisis Communication Consultant and Empowerment Strategist. It took me a full 5 minutes to laugh it out of my system. Andrea included one more message. Do you want in? You'd be a better speaker anyway. And the theme this year is truth and leadership. I didn't even have to think about it. 2 weeks later, I was flown down to L.A., where the conference was being hosted in one of those high-rise hotels with too much glass and too little personality. I had spoken at events before, but this one had a particular weight to it. I was scheduled to go on right after the midday panel, the one Melina was assigned to. I didn't try to talk to her beforehand. I wanted her to see me when it counted. She walked on stage looking like her usual polished self, all sleek lines and camera-ready charm. She opened with a carefully worded anecdote about learning through adversity and rebuilding a personal brand from the ground up. I watched from the side curtain, sipping coffee, knowing half the room had no idea the full story. But I also knew one thing. Truth has gravity. It pulls things down to earth, eventually. After the panel, There was a short break, and then my keynote began. The title? Authenticity is audit-proof. What real reputation is built on. Yeah, I wanted that one to sting. I walked on stage, nodded at the moderator, and began the speech I'd rehearsed 100 times in my head, not to take revenge, but to tell the truth in a room where it would land. I talked about how leadership isn't about appearances, but integrity. About how real trust is built when no one's watching, when you don't take the easy shortcut, or borrow what isn't yours, or lie to stay on the invite list. Then I told a story lightly anonymized, but unmistakable to anyone paying attention, about a woman who built her entire image on ambition, but couldn't tell the difference between strategy and manipulation. About how she gambled someone else's trust for applause she didn't earn. I ended it with this line. In the long run, credibility doesn't come from how loud your applause is. It comes from how quiet your conscience is. I looked right at her as I said it. She was sitting 3 rows from the front, jaw slightly clenched, hands folded too tightly in her lap. She didn't clap, but others did. A full room's worth of them. And that was enough. Afterward, a few attendees came up to me, asked questions, thanked me. One of the event sponsors handed me a card and said, "We need people like you for our executive training series." As I was collecting my things backstage, I caught one last glimpse of Melina through the mirror. She was walking out alone. No crowd. No camera. Just her reflection in the glass door, smaller now, somehow. I didn't follow her. I didn't say anything. Because the best kind of revenge isn't rage or cruelty or spectacle. It's watching someone lose access to the very stage they tried to steal. It's not about making sure they suffer, it's making sure you don't. And as I walked out into the soft Southern California sun, past the palm trees and buzzing traffic, I realized something. I didn't win because I exposed her. I won because I was never playing her game in the first place. And I never would again.